name is Johanna Schneider. I will be chairing these proceedings. To my right is Randolph Nikodon, to my left is Mark Zuroff, and to my far left is Mark Lerma. We will be the board for these proceedings. So tonight it's my understanding that we have thank you. Oh wow, look at that. Some technical wrinkles. Typically the proceedings of this board are recorded or are transcribed by a court reporter. We don't have that available this evening, but we are being videoed. So please be mindful of that as you make your presentations, and a transcript, as I understand it, will be prepared based on the video, although we do not have anyone live doing that here this evening. What we are going to hear tonight is the applicant's description of its proposed changes to the project. As I said, the project was approved in March 2017. At some point this board just determined that this was a significant modification to the existing permit, so we are going through this modification process. The hearing for this was opened on April 25th, 2019, but this is the first substantive hearing and the first one at which testimony will be heard by the board. And I guess with that, I guess just a couple other housekeeping things. So tonight our focus is going to be on hearing from the applicant's team regarding what has changed or what is proposed to be changed from the 2017 project. We will also be taking public testimony tonight. For people who are here and do wish to speak, please keep in mind that this is not a reopening of the original project, but we will be taking testimony. We'll be quite interested in hearing comments as they relate to the modifications. And I would give the applicant and its team the same advice. Yes, it'd be nice to have a refresher, but what we're really here to hear about is the proposed modification. The next, and I will repeat this at the end of tonight's hearing, the next hearing on this will be on June 19th. And at that time, we will be taking up architecture, traffic, and parking. And so, anything else, Maria?
Just some really brief notes.
Please go right ahead.
Maria Morelli, Senior Planner of the Planning Department. We do have reports. Everything that pertains to this case is on the website. Go to the Planning Department and look at 40B projects, and you'll see 1180 Boylston Street, modified comprehensive permit, all the plans, transcripts, any key dates. Waiver comparison has been submitted. We've also had submitted from the applicant an updated traffic study, parking demand narrative, a geotech memo, as well as a status of the remediation. This is a remediation site, and the former owner, Cumberland Farms, is responsible for the remediation, which is still ongoing. And we will get a brief update from the applicant as to that. And there's also a stormwater report, and all of that has been posted online. And so that's all I wanted to mention. And one more thing, we will have peer review on all of those functional areas as well.
Great. Thank you, Maria. We will hear from the applicant.
Oh,
yes, please go right ahead.
Again, my name is Randolph Nikodon. For the record, I'm making a disclosure of my financial interest in matters involving the consultants engaged by the applicant for the project as a non-elected municipal employee as required by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 268A, Section 19. Niche Engineering and GEI are the civil and geotechnical consultants engaged by the applicant. Niche is providing, and GEI has recently provided professional services under contract to Goody Clancy Associates Incorporated, the firm where I am employed. Currently, I'm a principal and the director of operations, also a director and secretary of the corporation. Prior to this May 15th, 2019 hearing, I have made this disclosure in writing to the Office of Town Council and stated my belief that I will be able to impartially exercise my duties as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals despite this business interest of the applicant's consultants.
Any other administrative or housekeeping matters before we get started? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant now.
My name is Haril Pandya, principal at CBT. And we have been part of the design process and the application process since its inception. Part of the overall changes that are part of why we're here today is really a representation of a few things. One is an acquisition of an adjacent property, and two, addressing some of the opportunities as a result of the acquisition over some of the improvements as a result of the acquisition. So when we had first come in and been approved, it was a unique shaped property, which actually really pushed us towards a parking mechanism and foundation mechanism that was, as a result of existing site conditions, really, we were given what we had. And so we had an elevator lift situation for the cars, we had a valet system for the parking, and we had some concerns overall about queuing and whatnot from parking, but as a result of the acquisition of the abutting property, the site has actually regularized from an L-shaped site to essentially a square or a more regular shaped site, which actually allows us to create improvements overall, and parking actually has allowed us to go to a more self-park situation. I'll dive into that as we go, but that's essentially the overall analysis. So the 3,000 plus or minus square footage pickup that we got from the lot area from the abutting properties has allowed that to happen, and created overall efficiencies and betterments overall from an economic perspective for us to keep moving forward. But obviously as a result of the changes is why we're here today. So just a quick understanding of the overall site. This is at the intersection of Route 9 and Hammond Street. In the beginnings, and this goes back a couple of years, this was always, from our perspective, an opportunity to create a gateway project as we're moving east towards the city, and to really take what we felt was sort of an odd blighted site, because it was just a gas station with an FAR of 1 and really wasn't really doing much from a community and neighborhood perspective, and create an opportunity for residential, retail, and complete a corner urbanistically that would be helpful from a town's perspective, and be able to create a nice walking opportunity from a sidewalk, and extend communities and neighborhoods with retail. So, to complete the corner, complete the block, and create a gateway project that really is, within a mile or so, really getting more closer to the city. This site was actually an important project from that perspective, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we put from a building or architecture perspective was, had that sort of iconic opportunity, and was representative of something wonderful that was part of the entryway. So here's the site again from. Okay. So here's the site over here. Again, that one-story gas station piece. Okay. And then sort of looking back the other way, looking west, there's the site again. Oh, easier to see on my screen, more difficult to see on the projection screen. But the the one-story building that's here, again, just views of the site as it is today. This is from Hammond, looking at that corner. Again, this is where the site would be, in that corner. This is again a little bit further back on Hammond, looking at that corner behind this tree would be that site. There's a lot of great retail along that site, as it is on the right-hand side, between breakfast place and there's a nail salon. There's a few other sort of service-based amenities that are there. That part of completing that corner would be a good idea from an urbanistic perspective. And then sort of looking across to see from the opposite side, looking back at the site, this would be the site over here behind the tree. And then further down, looking east, the site would be over here. Looking back the other way. And then just from a site plan perspective, this is where we were before with I guess we're just referring to it as a sushi building, but obviously it had other tenants in it. But this was how the site configuration was before. As I mentioned, it was more of an L-shaped site. And so as a result, we were originally entering off of Route 9 underneath the building here, going into a pair of garage elevators and going down. And it was really challenging. We had done many studies to understand if we can get a ramp and make it self-park and sort of ease the queuing, but as a result of the site configuration, we weren't able to achieve that. So this is where it was before, previously approved. So we were coming in, you can see here, these were the two garage elevator bays. They would take you in, valet would take you down. And from all the parking consultants and the valet consultants we had talked to, this was something that we felt that we could achieve from a timing perspective, queuing perspective. Everything felt like it was able to achieve the timings that we wanted to do. The red dashed line represents what we are now considering taking over as we've acquired the site, and as a result of doing that, we have now added, like I said, that plus or minus 3,000 square feet. But as you can see, also as a result, we are no longer creating the lift system. We're actually going down with a ramp, because you can see we'll get the clearances that we need for turning radiuses and whatnot underneath that retail. So it makes it a lot easier for many reasons, not only from a queuing perspective and whatnot, but it makes it much easier from an operations perspective as well. So we have 70 spots below in the garage, self-park, and we have 2 spots here, I guess call it on grade for lack of better definition, but 2 spots here. And then building management can obviously oversee however else the driveway and the approach needs to be used. We've talked about the loading lay-by that's always been here since the beginning, so that remains. But and a shared loading lay-by, as we've always talked about as well. But as you can see now with the retail and the self-park situation, it's sort of eased that piece. This is what was there before, so you can see here, these are the 2 lifts that came down. We had a lot of coordination. These were the construction drawings, so you have a better sense of what it was like with the multiple stacking. But now, as you see here, this is where we are today. Coming down, you'd essentially be able to self-park. So both for retail and for residential, we have 40 spots plus or minus for residential, 30 spots plus or minus for retail, and the 2 surface spots for a total of 72 spots for the full site. This is the other level rather of parking. So make sure compact spaces and regular spaces. This is where we were before. As you can see here, this is the building that we were trying to negotiate with as a site plan. And now, it's a little bit late, but as you saw in previous plans, this is how it is now as a new proposed ground plan. We'll talk about trash and a couple other things in a minute, but again, we're just trying to give you the sense of the before and after, before and after, before and after. But a typical unit plan level, 2 through 4 with the existing building in place, and then you can see much more regularized floor plan as a result of acquiring the building next door. 11 units, almost 4, typical. 9 units on level 5 because of the setbacks and other things that we have negotiated prior. Overall, outside of acquiring the actual site, the step backs, the massing, all the things that we had talked about and felt were appropriate in the previous round remain. Nothing else has changed other than the fact that we've simply added the infill piece of the mass of the site that we've acquired. Frankly, outside of that and the parking, we are where we are. Level 6 with the setbacks. And then the roof plan, which, as you can imagine, has its complexities with stair overruns, mechanical, and a more regularized roof plan as a result of the site acquisition. So this is a elevation comparison, and you'll see obviously the top elevation represents where we were last when the project was approved to where we are today, and you can kind of see from top to bottom there is really no change because there was nothing impacted from the Boylston Street elevation on the Route 9 side. And then this is what the Boylston Street elevation would look like. This is where the cars would come in, right here underneath the building, and essentially wrap around the building, if you will, go down the parking ramp and into the garage. Again, same thing, change. Here you can start seeing the differential on the Hammond Street side. So this is where we were before with the aforementioned sushi building. And then upon acquiring it, we pick up 5 extra units, added retail here, so we're sort of completing or continuing, if you will, the retail experience along the way to the street. So it's we're not experiencing the gap, but you can see here the mass essentially just completes itself as a result of pushing over the sushi building. A more close up of where we were, where we are. And then on the south side, you can kind of see here before, because of how we were indenting and keep understanding that the sushi building was there and the amount of fenestration we could have given the abutter. And now that we have acquired the site, there's more windows, there's more fenestration, so it kind of adds a little bit more familiarity and perforation of the facade, which is more of a blank facade before, even though the materiality was very analogous, because some of Cliff's notes and other comments before was making sure that there really is no back, that the materials continue all the way around, which we're still doing so. The only difference, again, as we said, is as we're adding the 5 units, you'll see more windows. Which I think actually helps this elevation quite substantially, so I think that's a helpful component. Again, a more close-up view, if you will. That's where we were. Here's where we are. So some more windows in the units. So lights on, people home. I think it's a little bit more activated elevation. On the east elevation, not much of a pickup here, as you can see, because again, we're not affecting this side. But again, just for the sake of showing it being thrown around the building. Oops, sorry. Push one button and one button too far. From a section perspective, again, we're still 2 levels below, and that really doesn't change. Again, the only part that really changes is when we are in that sushi building acquisition, picking up the 5 units. That's really the big differential, if at all. These are sort of helpful vignettes because they talk about this is here's the sushi building as it is today and how the site was L'd, if you will, as you can see here. And then when you complete it, that's the infill essentially of acquiring that piece. And rather than having more solidity, we get a little bit more transparency as a result of more windows and whatnot. So I think that's helpful to the context of the elevation of the overall building on approach on Hammock. And then from a massing perspective overall, again, here we are L'd or notched out from the building. And then here we are filled in with the windows, and again, the completion of retail all the way around the edge, which is nice. It's actually pulled forward, which is more in line with the retail that's adjacent to it, so it's not set back. So it feels like as if you were a pedestrian, you were creating that better sense of connectivity in the neighborhood by continuing the facade and the level at which the retail currently is today. Here's a shot sort of looking, I guess, diagonally across on Route 9, if you will, looking at the corner. And here's where we were, and then you can kind of see the sushi building here, but as a result, again, of filling it in, the facade essentially extends and continues. I think that's the sense of it. Now, we really like the idea of the corner being very present architecturally because it is such a prominent corner, things that we've talked about in the past and have come to some relative sense of consensus that it's an important site, it's an important corner, and we want to create that sense of completeness at that corner. This is more of an aerial from the back side of the building, not really a everyday viewpoint for many, unless you're in a drone, but the sense here is just to give you a sense of that's the building that was there, and then sort of, again, completing the square site with the acquisition of the building. Same thing, left to right. And then from a shadow study perspective, it's really not much of a change because that infill mass doesn't impact the shadow given the solar angle coming from behind. It's really just, it's the same as it was before. And then traffic, I don't know if we want to, Giles, do you want to jump in here or just talk about this piece, the loading component?
If I just ask a question.
It's still the same. But yeah.
I just wanted to ask you a question about the retail. So you added retail space, and I just wanted to know if there are any changes in retail uses. Okay, so at the previous project, there were no food uses?
No food uses. So the intensity is the same as far as requirements from our perspective. So no food uses. The loading remains the same as you can see here by this diagram. We're still using the lay-by, and it seems it works as it did before. No change to that component as part of the site code, as part of the project goes. So that's where we are overall. Like I said, plus or minus 3,000 square foot change in overall site area. We have about a plus or minus 8,000 square foot change in living area. We've added about 1,700 square feet in retail as a result of new ground floor retail that wasn't there before. We went from 45 units to 50 units. And then we went again from parking spaces at 66 to 72. And we went from a valet stacker situation to a ramped self-park status. As far as the overall day in the life of the building, we are still planning from a trash perspective to have trash rooms on every floor, that it gets picked up by building management, brought to a trash room in the garage level. Each retail space has its own temporary trash storage, which building maintenance will take from that and bring down to the trash room. Twice a week pickup, and it'll be on the Route 9 side, essentially right here. And by Casella Waste, we've coordinated with them as well, and they'll be, again, the same trash pickup that we had before. So we have temporary storage per floor, temporary storage by retail, picked up by building management, brought to that twice a week, and picked up by the service. And then from the trash room in the basement, very similar, we have the electric tug system that brings the canisters up and brought to the curbside on a pickup basis on the Boylston Street side, just like we had essentially before. And then, as I mentioned, on the parking, from the parking perspective, we've added a few more parking spots as a result, and we have some, the temporary space. We have the accessible van spot and then a swing temporary spot at grade level, adding to a total of 72. So that's how trash works, that's how parking works, and hopefully that diminishes the need for queuing or anything else that we might have had a previous concern for in the previous iteration, and actually becomes a little bit smoother.
Okay, anything else before we start asking questions?
Ask.
Let's do it first.
All right,
Good.
what appears to me is that by expanding the retail, you just had it up, it's fine, what you had up is
Oh,
fine.
sorry.
That there's another street parking space that's going to be affected because the retail is in front of the sushi building. There is at least one space, maybe two. And the street tree, which is right there, which we discussed in detail, that has to stay, I believe. But are we losing more street parking?
Rashna Balakrishna. We did, after the end of the previous comprehensive permit process, receive permission from the town arborist to remove that street tree on Hammond Street. So that was taken care of at that, immediately after the previous process.
And can you respond to the question about whether or not there will be additional street spaces lost because of the additional retail?
There will be one metered parking spot that will be removed on Hammond Street.
Excuse me, can you just clarify if that's as a result of the loading zone? Or is this related to the modification, the proposed modification?
That was actually related to the loading zone.
Okay,
on
so there are
Hammond
no
Street.
new
So pre-
parking
No,
spaces?
there are no
Okay.
new spaces that would be lost. That was actually, yeah, that's correct. It was,
It's part of the previous.
it was, something that came up
Right, so
previously.
there's no additional
And
loss.
we got permission for the tree to be removed. We will be replacing it, and there will be one parking spot removed. But that was related to the loading zone, which was also reviewed by the Transportation Board and the DPW.
So will there be additional landscaping because of the additional frontage?
Yep. As far as the site plan comes to improvements as a result of construction to make sure sidewalks and and the adjacent landscaping as it relates to paving or anything else directly in front of the building will be in keeping with everything else that we planned previously along the streetscape. So we'll just extend that down that extra few feet that the sushi building was at. So right now, the existing, I know. So anything that, you can see here, this comes pretty much very close up to the lot line. So the indents that we're creating for doors and whatnot, that'll be very similar to whatever we're doing for improvements within the property line here. So it'll be beautified and improved and restored as a result of the construction work that we're doing.
But there is no additional green space or open space, even though the building is expanding. Right.
Right. It's just kind of, it's within the same or similar footprint that the previous building was there before.
And no resident roof deck or anything like that. I'm asking because I think, one of the critiques of this project received in the first go around was that there was not any usable open space for residents of the building. So I wondered if, given that you've got a little more space to play with, if you had considered putting a roof deck or some other private open space for the residents.
Yeah, there have been setbacks and relief at multiple levels on 5 and 6 that hold back anyway. So if there are balconies and opportunities to just create what open space that's there, the building does not go straight to the lot line as it is. So there is relief from the overall lot line as it is. So if the residents want to come out and occupy any of that portion, that's fine. So I think we're not a zero lot line scenario as far as going directly to the edge of the lot line as it was from the previous go around. We're trying to hold back from the lot line edge as it is, just to create wider sidewalks. It's a more safe pedestrian experience.
As far as adding the additional retail space, which is a decent size store, and I know we talked about no food service, but is it possible that you could have professional offices in there and divide that space into smaller spaces?
I would defer to ownership on possible retailers.
For sure, it's possible.
Could you please give your name for the record?
Raj Dahanda, the developer. It's possible there could be professional offices, very much so. We haven't explored all the different possible tenancies at this point, but for sure any of them could be
So the
retail.
reconfiguration is possible.
Yeah, of course.
Now, I think that you said that there are 30 retail parking spaces in this proposal. Does that include employee parking for the retail spaces, or that's all?
Yes.
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 Okay. Another question I had, so it looks like, and I am very pleased to see the change in the parking, the access, the circulation. Even when we approved this project, I had grave concerns that what you had proposed was workable, and I think that this is much more feasible than the prior proposal. You all will remember that I had numerous concerns, and other members of the board had concerns about the loading pull-off on Hammond Street. And I wondered if there is any opportunity, now that you've got some more breathing room in the below-grade garage, to switch that loading into something that's actually on the site as opposed to on Hammond Street.
We come back to the notion of we have enough running room on the ramp for certain vehicles to get below grade. But loading trucks would require a longer ramp length for the slope required to get it down there, for which we still don't have that piece. So I still think having the lay-by loading, which is helpful. And again, this was something not only to serve the building, but this was a shared loading but loading area component. So I think that was a portion that we were hoping that would benefit not just us, but others.
Who else is it going to benefit now that you've taken the buildings next door?
it could conceivably benefit any of the other businesses on Hammond Street or Route 9 in the immediate area. You know, it could even be, you know, if there's residents or other people in that immediate area that are receiving anything. There is no other loading zone in that immediate area that's available. We've definitely seen trucks of various types coming onto the lot while it's empty, so I think, you know, there does seem to be some need for it. And that would be, the loading zone would only be used on off-peak hours between 10 and 3, which was discussed previously with the DPW.
I have 2 more questions, but do you have something?
Well, I'm new
related?
to this panel, but I was particularly curious about this loading bay. And I believe that the buildings that are located on Hammond Street do have access from the back of the buildings. There's parking lots behind, there's a parking lot behind them. So
Right.
they aren't without loading area currently. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So this would not be serving or need to serve those buildings?
This would perhaps be more convenient for some of them. So I would expect that it would serve, perhaps not for everybody, for all deliveries and all pickups, but being that it'd be easier to get in and out of as opposed to going behind the building and going in, backing out or backing in, all that kind of stuff. This would be far easier, and we think that it'll serve all of the businesses there.
Excuse me, I just might ask you to go to the podium when you need to speak, and
Sure.
also, Mark, you might need to share the microphone with Mark. Sorry about that. Just to make sure that the cable picks up your voice.
So I can understand a little bit better. Do you have a plan that depicts the buildings that are on Hammond Street as well, and the parking behind them, just so I
I don't think
Get
there's
a
a site plan,
context.
that's
can, you
students
don't
out
have
actually.
anything?
Do you have an
It's
overhead
pretty far down.
photograph?
Site photo.
Yeah.
Yes,
There it is.
there it is.
Okay.
That's what I remember. And the building you're acquiring
That-
is
This
that
building was
building
always
there.
used, this area.
So the
a lot.
other retail uses all have
I
access
did not touch that.
from the back. And has there been discussion with the owners of these businesses about sharing loading areas?
Raj Dahan.
Stores and restaurants?
No, we have not had conversation with the owner of that property regarding the loading dock situation now.
And that's one owner that owns that building?
Correct, yes.
And they're leasing space to the retail uses that are there now? Okay. Getting-
We've had general conversations with them.
Clarify it for now. Thank you.
Relating to the parking, and I know this is a discussion for a little further down the road, but given that you are adding 1,700 square feet of retail, are you going to be looking for additional parking waivers because of that space?
Well, actually, our parking consultant is here. We have updated the waivers, and I'll just ask Alan Simon, who prepared an updated parking review, to comment on that.
Hi, Alan Simon, Simon Design Engineering. The waiver is for the residential component, to take it down to ratios that we've agreed to with the peer reviewer. the peer reviewers suggested ratios for age-restricted housing. And the retail is accommodated within the 30 spaces, about the 32 odd spaces that are above the demand for the residential.
So zoning only requires you to have 32 spaces for the total amount of retail.
Five per thousand.
And my last question has to do with the south elevation. Mr. Cuddy, I think you want to come back up. And again, I think this is a big improvement and addresses a lot of the concerns that the earlier board had regarding, you know, the rear of the building kind of looking less interesting. The other sides of it, I do wonder why there seems to be a sort of hard stop to the windows of the new section.
Part of it is what's being planned from a floor plan perspective. So obviously we want windows in bedrooms and living spaces, but bathrooms and other core spaces typically don't have that. So while we know that on Hammond Street, in part of the south elevation, you can actually have the hat windows to be able to have the bathrooms and the kitchens and other components. So as it is right now in layout, we will go deeper as the project continues. Maybe there are opportunities for additional windows, but we haven't laid out every single unit yet as a result of the new acquisition of the piece. But understanding that that's in development, I think we too would like to see a little bit more fenestration on that side, so we'll explore that component.
I'm looking at the plans for the 5th floor, and I mean, I know this is early in design, but there do actually appear to be windows in some places in the plan in that corner that Chair is asking about that aren't in the elevation.
And being probably maybe as early as we are, may not be fully coordinated, but the sentiment is that we would like to see as much fenestration as we can get. I mean, it's south elevation, so it's a really good opportunity for light and natural light access into the building. I'm clicking faster than the images are changing, so I apologize.
Any other questions from the board? Randolph, go ahead.
I'm waiting for you to click back.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
Site plan.
Where would you like to go? Sorry.
I want to talk about the way the building joins the other retail buildings, and there was a site plan we were looking at for a little while that was not that one. That's fine.
This one's okay?
Sure. So in the 2017 scheme, when the sushi building was there, the new building was proposed, pretty close to it because the sushi building was right at its lot line. Again, it's an early design thing, but now that you've basically extended the retail portion of the frontage of the new building is longer, and then the rest of the building is retail, it seems like a nice long stretch of retail. There seems to be kind of a gap between the buildings. I don't know if you mean for there to be a gap, but it narrows as it goes back. Are you going to look at that? Both in the elevations as they're drawn now and in the plans, it looks like there's about this much space between the existing one-story buildings and your building. And I hope
So you're referring to the pochade space sort of plan south?
Yeah. Well,
in our
I think the
building?
pochade space is the other building, right?
Right, that's the, is that what you're referring to, Randolph? I'm sorry.
Yes, and I'm just, sorry, I don't have my hand on the right one, but in the elevations, it looks like they're not touching, but are they gonna touch? Is it gonna be continuous,
Yeah, and-
finished construction at the street level somehow?
And to your first point, I think the sense is that part of understanding that piece is understanding the foundation component.
Sure.
And find out where the footings will line up so that we can, so previously what we did with the sushi buildings there, we created a foundation component and cantilevered over the foundation
Right,
piece.
because of the property line to
That's
who knows
right.
where they are.
And part of that, understanding the expansion between the two. So I think right now, in a plan sentiment, depending where you think you're cutting this plan, we're showing the gap as a result, to make sure that it has buildability. I think ultimately we'd want to close the gap between the buildings.
Sure.
Right. When we get there, I think it's the right approach, just understanding constructability.
Anything else from the applicant? You don't have to have anything else if you don't.
Our unless there's other questions.
I'm sorry, did you want to speak to the current status of the remediation, or did you want to just wait for your consultant to be present at the next hearing?
I can't, I mean,
Okay.
they will be at the, you know.
Can you do
at
the
some
status of the permit?
upcoming
I just wanted to know the status of the state permit, if you can just
Sure.
speak to it.
Just get my notes. So with regard to the environmental status on the site, it was obviously a former Gulf service station. There's been remediation, extensive remediation going on since 2002 on that site. That was done by Cumberland, that was the former owner. It is continuing. They've done a number of things, including removal of tanks and monitoring the soil and the site. They're filing monitoring reports on a semi-annual basis. And in terms of the environmental status from a couple of years ago, nothing has really changed. The monitoring and the remediation is ongoing. Our development will not impede the groundwater remediation and will not exacerbate the extent or the migration of the groundwater contamination. What we will be doing is improving the site from an environmental perspective, since we'll be removing any remaining contaminated soil and groundwater from the site. We have, for the prior comprehensive permit round, provided environmental reports, and we'll also be doing that as needed in the future meetings. And then there will also be what's called a RAM plan, which is a release abatement measure for construction by the DEP. And that's basically any kind of work at a disposal site where the site is getting cleaned up. And so we'll be filing that with the DEP as part of our construction plan.
And could you just compare the depth from the one level with stackers and the 2 levels of parking below grade? Do you have like a delta in terms of the depth number
Of the
feet?
garage?
Mhm.
The garage is actually, from the prior plan, because we would have had to dig pits for the parking system. It's actually, I believe, 1 foot
The lowest level is 1 foot higher.
shorter. We're going down 1 foot less than we were before. So it's, even though it's 2 levels of parking, it's an improvement in that regard as well.
Thank you.
One last question from me. Because there's an increase in the number of units, what is the comparable increase in the affordable units?
It's the 20% ratio, so it's the same ratio that.
No, but in terms of
Before,
actual number of units.
Right, so it's 50 units total now, so it's 10.
It'll be 10 for all the
Yeah.
units.
Thank you. We are going to turn to public comment now. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak, I'd ask that you please go to the podium and give us your name and your address. As I said at the beginning, we're interested in hearing comments regarding the modification, not the project overall. We're not here to review the project. Just also a reminder, if you are here but don't have any comments tonight, we will be having plenty of other opportunities for public comment as we go through this process. Ms. Khan.
Thank you. Janice Khan. I am a town meeting member from Precinct 15 and have attended many of the previous meetings. So first I want to compliment the panel on asking many of the questions I actually had written down, so thank you very much for that. I do wonder about the pedestrian on Hammond Street. I am curious about how that will work. One of the things that the loading bay did was it cut into the sidewalk, which meant that pedestrians had to sort of jog in and then out again. And I wonder whether that's being rethought. It sounds like it's going to be the same as before from from if the loading zone is remaining there. The other thing I had was, first of all, I am very delighted to see the change in the parking. One of the things that troubled the neighborhood a lot was the fact that there could be cars idling for quite some time, right abutting the next house, which is 6 units of permanent affordable housing. And so it seemed very unfair to that particular house, the people living there. So I am glad to see that that's changed. The other thing that we were concerned about was about snow removal and all that equipment being pushed back there. And the trash system. So it sounds like the trash system is staying pretty much the way it was in the prior configuration, yes. But again, we're glad not to be dealing with idling cars and also the potential backup onto Route 9, which was another considerable issue for the neighborhood. So on balance, it seems like there have been some improvements to the site, and I think I can report back that it seems that we're at least starting on a good path. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm David Kobus. I'm a resident of the condominium at 629 Hammond Street, which is about a block and a half from the proposed site. In the 2017 approval, there was a building code waiver list, and in it showed every one of the coding waivers that had been made. I thought it was very useful. So it sort of reflects back to the gap that you mentioned. I'd like to see a redo, an update of that list, so we can compare it to what has been approved to see whether things are getting better or worse. Thank you.
I'll respond to that. So Mr. Kovas, we do have that waivers list. It was submitted a few days ago. I'll actually give you a copy
Oh,
this
okay,
evening. And
because
it's
I
also
didn't see it on the
posted online.
website
It is.
recently.
It is. It might be subtle, but it is posted on there. But I'll give it to you at the end.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else here who wishes to speak tonight? Okay, Maria, anything else?
Just two administrative details. I had discussed this with the project team or the applicant. The applicant does agree to pay for the stenographer services as well as the peer review for architecture, parking, traffic, and geotechnical.
Yes.
Okay, I will get proposals in for you to review and comment on. That was it.
Okay. Okay, with that, we are going to wrap up. The next hearing will be June 19th at 7 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for coming.